Will you just bow your heads and pray with me before we get started? Dear Heavenly Father, I can feel you're here today, Lord. I can feel that people are just seeing you for who you are today. And Lord, I'm in awe of seeing what you're doing in people's lives. I'm in awe of seeing people letting go of things that have just been a boat anchor and just dragged me down for so long. I'm in awe of hearing those stories. I'm in awe of seeing relationships built, Lord, because you and you alone are the reason for it. So Lord, I just pray that we build on that we continue to grow and we continue to answer your call here in South Reno to be an authentic kingdom community that is serving you and building your kingdom here on earth for something that is so much bigger than us. That we can feel it even when we're not looking for it. I just thank you for that in your Son's name. Amen. All right, a couple of things before I get into it. I just want to get a couple of save the dates. We're not ready to put a formal announcement up, but Easter is right around the corner. And in church, if we weren't thinking about Easter before we even started this church, we were in trouble. So we're in trouble. No, I'm just kidding. So we had a meeting where we came up with something a little extra special. We want to do the Wednesday before Easter. I don't know the date off the top of my head. It's like in the high teens. We're going to have a Holy Week service. We're going to come in and we're going to talk about all the elements that happen from Palm Sunday all the way leading up to Easter. We're going to have some worship. We're going to have a good time. We're going to celebrate together. We're also going to hear from the staff here in different areas. We're going to have a different number of staff teach a different thing. It's going to be an awesome evening, about an hour of your time. So put it on the calendar the Wednesday before Easter. We're going to get together and celebrate the important moment in human history, but most importantly, the important moment in what God does in people's lives that week. It's going to be an amazing week. So write it down on your calendars. Following Easter, we are going to do a 3-part series that leads up to Mother's Day. Easter and Mother's Day are 3 weeks apart. For those of you who are new to church, the 2 heaviest attended days in most churches are Easter and Mother's Day, and those are the days that you have to be ready for. So we are going to focus on the women in the church and the women in our community for 3 weeks following Easter. We're calling it This Girl Is on Fire. Yes, it's based on the Rhiannon song. Is that who sings it, Rhiannon?
No.
Rihanna.
No. Alicia Keys.
I know all the words. Well, we're going to have an amazing time. Pastor Tiffany and Pastor Rhiannon are going to start that series off for us. They're going to bring the word for us on a Sunday morning. It's going to be an amazing time, and it's really important. I think it's really important biblically, and I think it's really important to our community. So I want to just kind of put that on your radar. And moms, we're going to do something special on Mother's Day. If I told you what it is now, it wouldn't be special, so you'll have to show up to find out. All right, we've been walking down the road to victory. And the interesting thing about the road to victory, I'm going to give you a little recap because we're about 6 weeks in now. We started with this idea that we have to look here first, right? We have to be who God's called us to be. When people look at us and see us, we have to be breaking the stereotypes and being an authentic community of believers, which means, you guys know what I'm talking about with stereotypes, right? If you're not a Christian, you had a preconceived notion, a stereotype of what a Christian was before you showed up at church. And some of us who are still here, who have been here for every week, might still have those preconceived notions. So we're going down this road for two reasons. One, it's important that we know what victory actually is. And there's a point to us ending the road to victory on Easter, because that is the ultimate victory. But this is not the victory that we always think about. You guys have heard this. It's about losing. Sometimes the best way to get victory, and in this case, in our relationship and our walk with God, what Jesus wants us to know in the teachings that we've been talking about is that if we want to find, we have to first lose. We want to find ourselves, we have to let go of ourselves. And we've been jumping through stories that are great examples of either people letting go or people not letting go. Last week we talked about the rich young ruler without talking about money, which is like a big thing for pastors to do. But we talked about it being his one thing. And I sent you out of here with homework to identify the one thing and give it a name. And we're not going to do a hand-raising thing. But if you haven't gotten there yet, I want you to keep working on it. Have a discussion with God. Did you know that praying to God is having a discussion with God? It's not one of those where he's going to probably audibly talk back to you, but it is one of those moments where you can just ask him. Ask him, God, what is my one thing? I'm having a hard time figuring out what that one thing is. Because the truth is we have thousands of things, right? But there's that one thing that no matter how far down to our core we get stripped, we hang on to. So I want you to give it a name. This week we're going to be talking about what does it actually mean to let go. I've been talking about letting go a lot, but what does that actually mean? And there's a lot of really great stories in Scripture, but I think that we've dialed into one that was so critical that I can't help but to teach it. So, how many of you have ever hung onto a rope swing to swing into a body of water? Anybody? We had one where I grew up in Oakview, California, and there was this perfect swimming hole. It was about 10 feet deep. There was no current. It was like this wading pool in the middle of the river. And we used to go. The only issue with it is you had to clear some pretty thorny bushes to get in, and then you had to kind of get down river to get back out. But you couldn't come up river, so you had to jump in and then get out and walk back. But here's the thing, with that rope, if you swung out and didn't let go, because the rope was longer than the ledge, you would slam into thorny bushes. And we took a younger cousin with us once, and we tried to explain to him, trust me, that water hurts way less than if you hang on to the rope. But we have this natural instinct, right? Fight or flight, we're hanging on. If we let go, we're going to fall. And how many of you don't like to fall? I'm one of those guys. So we just tried to explain to him, don't hang on. And yet, there he goes. He swings out, the rope drops, he's out, he's at the pinnacle, and we all realize all at once, he's not going to let go. And he comes back and he doesn't let go, and he slams into these, I don't know what kind of bushes, like briar bushes. He had to spend like 3 hours in an Epsom salt bath because his whole body was scraped up. That fear and that decision to hang on cost him a lot of pain that day. And it was one of those stories, we have never live it down. I mean, if we got together as an entire family, that story would be told inside of 10 minutes flat. Because he was just head to toe scratched up. That's one of those moments, I can relate to that. I don't like heights, and I don't like falling. When I was a kid, it was a little different, but right now I have a feeling I wouldn't have even swung out, but I probably would have slammed into the bushes, just knowing me, because I would have said, no, not letting go. But you think about that instinct, right? Where does that instinct come from? Well, if you've ever had somebody hand you their baby within the first few months, 9 times out of 10, that baby does what? They cry. My favorite reaction is mothers are always the same, right? Oh, he never does that, or she never does that. Nonsense. They always do it. When I had my child, I decided I was going to be a little more different. I'm a very blunt and frank individual, so I would just, yeah, no, she doesn't like people. Get her back. I was just honest. She didn't like being held by other people. But it didn't really have anything to do with the other people. It had to do with that baby's instinct that mom or dad was safe. And letting go of mom and dad was scary. That's that instinct. And you know what? If we have it at 3 days old, it's not something you're going to shake very easy as an adult. Am I right? So those are the natural instincts. Look, we are made that way. If we weren't made that way, we wouldn't be that way when we were born. But what Jesus is saying is you can still feel like you need to be comfortable and warm and cozy and safe. But sometimes it hurts way less to just let go. Sometimes it hurts way less to just let go. So we've been talking about this passage in Luke chapter 9. And we've been talking about this moment where Jesus talks about whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross daily and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will save it. Whoever loses their life, and the key part of that is for me. Jesus is saying if you lose your life for the sake of what I'm teaching you, you'll find your own. Then he goes on to go on, and one of the most important parts of that passage that we focused on a little bit is he lets people know there are people who are present here today who will experience the kingdom of heaven before they take their last breath, right? What good is it to hang on to something if it's going to kill you and destroy you, right? What good does it? It's like hanging onto that rope. You know you're going to get scratched up, but you hang on to it because you think it's the lesser of two evils. Well, what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about this very specific moment that I think that ties directly back to this passage. What it means to lose your life so that you can find it in Christ. We're going to be in John chapter 5. If you've got your Bibles, go ahead and take it out. If not, it will be on the screen. We're going to read through 15 verses, starting with verse 1. The title above this passage in my Bible says, "The Healing at the Pool." And I don't think that actually does enough justice for what happens in this, because there's so much stuff to unpack in this passage. Let's start with verse 1. Sometime later, Jesus went up to Jerusalem for one of the Jewish festivals. Now there is in Jerusalem, near the Sheep Gate, a pool, which in Aramaic is called Bethesda, and which is surrounded by 5 covered colonnades. Here, a great number of disabled people use it to lie: the blind, the lame, the paralyzed. One who was there had been an invalid for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and learned that he had been in this condition for a long time, he asked him, "Do you want to get well?" "Sir," the invalid replies, "I have no one to help me into the pool. When the water is stirred, while I am trying to get in, someone else goes down ahead of me." Then Jesus said to him, "Get up, pick up your mat, and walk." All at once the man was cured. He picked up his mat and walked. The day on which this took place was a Sabbath, and so the Jewish leaders, see, these guys, they have all the time in the world to follow Jesus around and criticize everything that he does. You guys know anybody like that in your life? Doesn't matter what you do. Said to the man who had been healed, "It is the Sabbath. The law forbids you to carry your mat." But he replied, "The man who made me well said to me, 'Pick up your mat and walk.'" So they asked him, "Who is this fellow who told you to pick up your mat and walk?" The man who was healed had no idea who it was, for Jesus had slipped away into the crowd that was there. Later, Jesus found him at the temple and said to him, "See, you are well again. Stop sinning or something worse may happen to you." The man went away and told the Jewish leaders that it was Jesus who made him well. Like I said, there is a lot to unpack in this. One of the first things that strikes me is this question that Jesus asked him: "Do you want to be well?" Depending on the translation of the Bible you have in your lap, it might say, "Do you want to be healed?" Now, the important part about this is to understand that Jesus wasn't being cheeky. He wasn't being sarcastic. Because Jesus doesn't do that. He never asks a question without compassion and mercy and love. And he never does it outside of complete honesty. So Jesus honestly wanted to know, do you want to be well? But this question was kind of veiled in the real question, because what Jesus was saying wasn't, do you want to be healed? He was saying, do you want to no longer be identified by your condition? Do you want to not be the person who is just known as the paralyzed guy that sits next to the pool for 38 years? Understand, this guy had been paralyzed next to this pool for longer than Jesus had been alive. Jesus was 33-ish at this point. This guy had been by the pool for 38 years. It doesn't say how old he is, but he'd been there, waiting for his turn to slip into the pool, to be healed. Now, it doesn't clarify what all that tradition is. The thought is if you're by the pool and you need healing, as soon as the water is stirred, it's believed that the angel stirred the water. If you were the first one in the pool, you would be healed. That's why they're all laying around the pool, waiting for the stirring to happen so they can be the fastest one into the pool. So this guy's entire life was defined by everyone around him being faster than him. When Jesus asked him, do you want to be healed? He responded with, everybody's faster than me, it'll never happen. He then became identified as somebody who was never going to make it in life because of his own inability. That's the point that Jesus wants to make here. It's not who's the fastest, who's the strongest, who's the smartest, who works the hardest. None of those things is what Jesus says takes to receive the grace, mercy, and love of God. And one of the coolest parts about this is if we look at the way that this healing went down, it's kind of interesting because there's no secret handshake. There's no say I'm healed 10 times. There's no magic word. Jesus said you're healed. And the guy just knew he was healed. Think about this for a second. If you've ever had a surgery on a leg or hurt a leg or a foot, the first time you try and walk on it, it doesn't exactly work right. Right? Doesn't matter what it is. You could have broken a toe. The first time you take a step that is a healed step, there's still going to be a limp. Most of that's because your body has atrophied a little bit from not using it. It's muscle memory has kind of gone away. 38 years laying on a mat next to a pool. The guy, even if modern medicine gave him a pill and it was going to cure him, it would take him months to be able to take a step. Right? So we are talking about an actual miracle here. But all too often what we focus on is we focus on that miracle. And then we focus on our ability to have enough faith to make that miracle happen in our lives. And that is not the lesson here. I've heard that lesson taught. I think I've written a paper on this passage that kind of focused on the strength of faith to do miraculous things in our lives. But as I prayed and as I studied, I didn't feel like that was the message here. It wasn't that I could provoke enough faith in my life to get God to do something for me. You see, that's a transactional relationship. That means I'm going to give God something and He's going to give me something in return. The whole idea of the pool of Bethesda is transactional. If you're first, you get it. Bethesda, just the word itself, means house of mercy. The word itself exemplifies what Christ is trying to teach. Not only this man, but obviously the religious leaders and all of the Jews that were there for the festival, what he was talking about. Because there wasn't a whole lot of fanfare put into the actual healing. The fanfare was put into the question and what happened after. So I want to focus on that a little bit. I want you to know that it's very, very important that we recognize that Jesus was not devaluing this guy's condition when he asked that question. Jesus doesn't devalue anything. Doesn't matter where you're at or what you're struggling with. There is no devaluing in the words of Jesus Christ. None. Now, do you want to let go of the emotional attachment that you have to your one thing? Do you want to let go of the emotional attachment that has created the identity based on your one thing? Right? So we gave it a name. Now, do you want to be identified by that thing? No. Because what Jesus is saying is you're not identified by that. You're identified by grace and mercy and love. And sometimes we take this message and we make it personal. Like, this is what Jesus did in my life, and there's a lot of truth to that. But why did He do that in your life? We talked a few weeks about we got to quit making it about us, right? Because we need to have a personal relationship with Jesus. But let me just assure you, if you are attempting to just have a personal relationship with Jesus, a one-on-one bro relationship with Jesus, that's not how it's supposed to work. You see, the most important thing that happened with this guy is what he told people after it happened. You see, he couldn't explain what happened. He couldn't explain it. Do you have any idea what kind of faith that's going to create? You see, Jesus didn't heal him because he had faith. That's where the misnomer is in that. Jesus healed a man who had no faith. None. He had no faith. The only thing he had faith in is a superstition about a pool that might stir, and if you're the first one in, whatever's wrong with you, you get healed. That's the faith that this man showed. So what Jesus is saying is you can't faith your way into a miracle. You just can't. Your strong faith is important whether you have a miracle in your life or not. Miracles happen. I've seen them in people's lives. I've seen it in my life. Miracles absolutely happen. I don't want to devalue the miracle because that is absolutely a miracle. But I want to get out of the mindset that we can do anything to create it. All right. My first point is we need to let go of the drama. And let me just be clear. I'm not devaluing your drama. That's not what I'm saying. But all of us know somebody that leads with drama. right? I come from a very dramatic family. I know that I'm an emotionally dramatic human being. I know it. I tell a story, I get into it, I'm all about it. Most of my negative drama comes from a thing that my dad has said I've had for a lot of years. That's a Superman complex, where I feel like I need to stand in front of people who are being wounded to prevent them from being wounded, like I can do anything about it. So what happens with me is where I get the most upset is when I see other people being hurt, and that's the thing I got to let go of, because we're all going to get hurt. Matter of fact, James and Paul both tell us that in those moments when we persevere through the hurt, our character in Christ is being formed. It sounds crazy. Francis Chan used to say, you want to really grow in your faith, lean into your hurt. Lean into your hurt. I love that. It didn't mean that I wanted to wallow in my hurt, but it did mean that if I wanted it to go away and not be identified by it, I had to lean into it. I had to let it mold my character. That's what Jesus is calling us to do right here. So, these people, right? So, I heard a funny story. I want to give whoever told it the right amount of credit. Another pastor, not named me, told a story about a perfect example of what it means to be overly dramatic, right? Brand new neighbors move into the neighborhood and they bring over cookies. And when the new neighbors leave, the person who received the cookies just started complaining about the cookies. You know, wonder if they're gluten-free. You know, do they know that I have a nut allergy? You know, they got wrapped up in the actual cookies themselves that they forgot that somebody just came over and showed them compassion and hospitality. They did what we're called to do, how we're called to be with one another, but instead it turned into this thing. They don't even know these people, right? They don't even know them. And we all know people like that. I know way too many people like that. Some of them have my last name. I know it to be true. And I love you when you know it's true. So I want to be very clear what we're talking about is not that drama. Okay? Not that drama. Those people are hard to be around, but we love them, right? What I'm talking about is it doesn't even have to be your one thing. Right? Life is going to throw you drama. What Jesus is asking when he says, do you want to be well? When he's asking, do you want to be identified? Do you want to stop being identified? What he's actually saying is do you want to save your emotional energy for when you really need it? For when the drama is real? For when something comes up where you need to put that energy into it? Don't put it into your neighbor bringing you cookies. That's a waste of energy, because you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. One of my favorite song lyrics in Christian music is, you're only one phone call from your knees. I don't know if you've ever gotten that phone call. I've gotten too many of them. And I've sat with too many people who've gotten that phone call. And I'm probably going to sit with a lot more throughout the rest of my life, and so are you. And someone's going to sit with you. I would say, you're going to need that energy then. There's no need wasting it now, especially on the little stuff, right? Especially on something that you are hanging on to because you feel emotionally identified to it. Think about it. I had a conversation with a guy, a contractor who was doing work. We could not get this guy to call back. I'm not kidding you, this happened Wednesday. We could not get him to call back. Finally, somebody said, hey, you're not very good at all the administrative stuff, are you? And he said, no, not usually, but it's really bad right now because I have stage 3 cancer. We stopped, we prayed, we expressed our condolences and concern. But here's the thing, every time an issue came up, he threw his cancer at it. And I don't want to devalue the fact that this gentleman is fighting cancer. What I want to say is he's putting it out there that this is his identifying thing. And all his energy goes into it. Let me tell you, if you're fighting cancer, you have to put your energy into it. But what he's doing is he's using it as this emotional crutch. And that's sucking the energy out of where he needs it to fight just that. And look, this is all pre-Jesus advice. You understand that I'm telling you what Jesus taught, but this applies to whether or not you're a believer in here or not. We have these things that we let control our lives. We let them control our lives because we try so hard to control them ourselves. We're hanging out over the water, And we know that if we don't let go, we're going to get scratched from head to toe. And we still hang on. And we take that beating. And I would assert that that's not where you want to be. So we need to let go of the drama. And here's the thing. If you've ever been married for longer than 2 minutes, you've had an argument with your spouse. If you've been in a relationship with a member of the opposite sex for longer than 2 seconds, you've had an argument, right? People argue. Crystal and I have thrown down. And she scares me. I mean, we have a nickname for her, Micro Ninja, right? She will end me, and I know it. But here's the thing. I'm going to give you guys all a piece of advice. Typically, those arguments are something that we're hanging on to because we feel the need to be right even when we're wrong. I know that there's somebody in here, not named me, that has had an argument and held their ground even when they've been proved wrong. Because being wrong is unacceptable in an argument. I will tell you the best way to end an argument, to end the drama. Practical advice, right? A couple of weeks ago I told you to argue naked. I've got different advice. If this doesn't work, try the naked thing, right? If you're a married couple and you have an argument, argue naked. It will end. Okay? But here's the other one. Ask them, why are you arguing? They will always say, I'm not arguing. And then you have it. You're arguing about arguing. Done. And if they just get mad, just start taking off the clothes. It will work. That's the best advice I can ever give anybody. Okay? So, we want to let go of that drama, but then we also need to have a look at how this guy responded to what Jesus told him, right? Which brings me to my next point. We need to let go of a broken worldview. We need to let go of a broken worldview. This broken worldview is this idea that we have to be the fastest, the strongest, the smartest, the most successful. Like these things are going to be identifying markers for us. How nice is our car? How nice is our house? How well behaved are my children? How good are my children in sports? How good are my children at school? All of these things identify us, and we need to let go of the idea that that is the view of the world that works. We need to let go of that view, because here's a guy who sat next to a pool for 38 years. And Jesus said, pick up your mat and walk. What did the guy do? He got up and walked. There was no discussion. There was nothing. The guy just took off. And Jesus didn't even finish his conversation with the guy. Right? It wasn't that he was the fastest. It wasn't that he was the strongest or the smartest or had the most money. We talked about that, where only the rich and powerful could get the good sacrifices at the temple because it cost so much money to buy the sacrifice. There were rules. You couldn't bring your own sacrifice. You could have 100 sheep. They won't let you bring your own in. It's not about that. This is the message that Jesus was constantly giving. We talked about Pharisees, about how he's always talking to the Pharisees. And let me just tell you, he's not fighting and arguing with the Pharisees. He wants them to see the truth. He wants them to be the people that he knows they could be. These are holy men of God. If they could only see what he's trying to show them, human history would have been rewritten in a moment. And now here we are 2,000 years later, still trying to rewrite this idea that we have any control over our salvation, that we have any control over anything that we're doing, because we try and hang on to it. Because we think that if we just work a little bit harder and earn a little bit more money, if we could just become a little bit faster, we would be better than that next guy. That's a broken worldview. And you look at this guy's response, right? So he gets up and he walks away. But if you see what happens after, the Jewish leaders are right on top of him. They're like, whoa, 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 whoa. It's illegal for you to be healed. Catch that. You are paralyzed and have been sitting in the same spot for 38 years. Somebody comes by and heals you, and the very next thing that happens is somebody tells you, you better put your mat back down and sit back down because that's not legal. If one of you experienced a miracle today, what they're saying is that wouldn't be legal today because it's the Sabbath. That's a broken worldview. That's a broken biblical view. God can do an amazing thing in anybody's life at any given moment, and he's proved that time and time again. time and time again. We have to let go of this idea that we can control the outcome by working harder, studying more, all of that. The self-made man culture has got to go away. Think about this. How many times have you maybe heard or said things would be different if? You could finish that sentence in your life right now. Things would be different if I had more money in the bank. Things would be different if I would have gotten that promotion that I got passed over for. Things would be different if my child wasn't sick. We have these things in our life. Things would be different if, and that feeds into that worldview. It feeds into a lot of religious views that we have some kind of control on how we pray or what we do or how we act and how we walk. God operates in the world of grace and mercy and love and compassion. He does not operate in rewarding the best. Ecclesiastes 9, I don't think this is going to be on the screen. Ecclesiastes 9, 7 through 11. I love this passage. It says, "Go, eat your food with gladness and drink your wine with a joyful heart, for God has already approved what you do." Go, live your life because God is in it. Whatever you do, you're doing it because God is in your life. That means have a good meal with your friends. Have a glass of wine after. Understand? This is what God is saying, right? So I'm not going down that path. But enjoy your life because God is in it, right? Because it says, always be clothed in white, lead a life that's glorifying to God, and always anoint your head with oil. Always look good, always smell good, right? That's what anointing your head with oil meant at this time. We anoint healing oils. There's a part of that also, but you don't anoint yourself with oil. When you anoint yourself with oil, you make yourself smell good, right? And the guys, the ladies appreciate it. Just saying. Enjoy life with your wife, whom you love, all the days of this meaningless life that God has given you under the sun. All of your meaningless days. So, he's telling me to enjoy my marriage with my wife because it's meaningless. No, that's not what he's saying. What he's saying is the reason that you do that is not the meaning that you think that it is. It's a distorted worldview. Change the meaning. For this is your lot in life, and your toilsome labor under the sun, your useless effort to control it yourself every day towards something that doesn't mean what you think it does. Have you ever done a project at work or school and then figured out you did it wrong? Spent weeks on it? That's what he's saying. He's saying the stuff that you toil with, the stuff that you struggle with, the stuff that you're fighting and you're swimming against the current with, that's how it's going to feel when you get to the end. Whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might. Work your butt off. Right? But do it because it's a blessing. For in the realm of the dead, where you are going, we are all dust. We are all going to the same place. I don't care if you're faster or stronger or smarter than me. I don't want to race you to where we're going. So if you want to race, go on ahead, but God's got different plans. Don't be in a hurry. If you are still here, you're here because God's got something planned for you. This is it. I have seen something else under the sun. Here's the important part. Here's the difference in this worldview. The race is not to the swift or battle to the strong. It's not about the fastest. It's not about the strongest. Nor does food come to the wise. You don't have to be the smartest guy to feed your family or wealth to the brilliant. Doesn't matter how smart you are. Some of the smartest people I know don't have two nipples to rub together. Or favor to the learned. You cannot earn that favor. But time and chance happen to them all. This is the important part. I always like to talk about, we're getting ready to celebrate Mother's Day and all the things that mean. You notice that there's no labeling of who this is for. Right? There's no he, she, them, us. All of that is gone. It's just us. Doesn't go to the fastest. It doesn't go to the strongest. It goes to those who identify in Christ. Those who are identified. And look, a lot of people get a little freaked out by this, right? But if you look at this guy, Jesus doesn't give him the 3 perfect keys to life that will end up getting him healed. He just says, get up and walk. This is my favorite part. This is my favorite part. Think about this moment. And I want you to picture you're that guy. And you get up and you're walking and you're confused because nothing happened. You just knew you were healed. Look, there was nothing there. The guy just knew. He was overwhelmed with the sense that his legs were going to work if he got up and tried to walk. And then he's walking through the streets and he's getting peppered with questions that he doesn't know the answer to. I don't know. Hey, who healed you? No. I see the guy's shoulder stroking. But most everybody in here is not going to just accept that and go run a marathon. So he wants to find out who this guy was. And where does he go? He goes to the temple. The temple, the holiest place in the city. He wanted to be in a holy place. And he found the holiest of holies there. Who actually found him. Very important part of that verse. The guy went looking for him, but ended up being found. Right? Ended up being found. Which brings me to the next part, which is we need to let go of the idea that life is something we can figure out. Stop. Let me assure you, we still haven't figured stuff out. There's still an ongoing debate about whether or not your appendix is a useful organ or not. I had mine out, so it doesn't matter. But I remember when it went out, that was another let go story for another day. But they've flip-flopped. Is it useful? Is it not useful? They're back on the fence. We have no idea. They're still discovering stuff about the body. They're still discovering planets that we didn't know existed. We don't even come close to having anything figured out. Just as a people. So why would we toil over trying to figure stuff out? They asked this guy, what happened? I don't know, but my legs work. That's all I know. Why are you so joyful and so happy and so at ease and so at peace? If you're being asked that question and you didn't do anything to get there, your answer is the same. I don't know. I met this guy and it changed my life. There's pictures throughout this entire passage. I could preach on this for a month. There's pictures throughout the entire thing. But what he's saying is you can't figure it out. He's going to snap his fingers. He's going to say a magic spell. He can do anything. So you're healed. What does it mean to let go of it? See, all of those things that I talked about, those were pre-Jesus, right? And I have to kind of speed up a little bit. But what he's saying is let go of the drama. No more drama. Let go of this broken worldview and let go of trying to figure it all out. No matter where you're at in your faith today, those 3 things work for you. Those 3 things work. But then we get to the important part. We enter to where Jesus now comes in. We need to let go of finding God. I have heard, I've been looking for God. I don't see him. I don't feel him. Why isn't he answering my prayers? Where is he? I got this going on. I'm worried about my kids. I'm worried about my family. I've got all of this going on. Where is he? I can't find him. It's because you don't have any idea where to look. If you're in here looking for him, it's a good start. There's a passage that says, draw near to God and he'll draw near to you. That doesn't mean you have to go all Indiana Jones and go on an expedition to try and find him. God is there, right? God's grace exists. If you were drowning under a lake and the water was like glass, and all you had to do was come up above the water just a little bit. There's a great example of it when Jesus helps Peter up. Jesus reached down and helped Peter up. God is right there. Never leaves us. But we're not going to find him. We're not going to go looking for him. And Jesus shows that in this moment where it says Jesus found him. And then Jesus said some stuff that's very important because he goes, now go and sin no more or something worse might happen to you. Now I've heard this passage preached very poorly that now if you don't lead this perfect life, you're going to be paralyzed or something worse is going to happen to you. So now you put this effort into being somebody that you think is going to prevent you from ending up back on a mat next to that pool. That's not what Jesus is saying. Jesus is saying, if you let go of that nonsense, let go of the emotional attachment identity, let go of this and just realize that there's something so much bigger for you that has nothing but your best decided for you. Go and sin no more means to know Jesus. Because if somebody tells you to stop sinning, your answer should be, that's impossible. That's impossible. And Jesus' answer would be, you're right. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm here. That's what Jesus would tell you. That's why I came to earth. That's why I lived a perfect life. That's why I died on the cross, came back, ascended to heaven. That's why I'm here. This is physical, tangible gospel. Physical, tangible salvation. This man's life was saved by no effort of his own. The pool wasn't stirred. There's a story about him getting out of the pool. My last thing that we need to let go of is fighting sin. You have no control over it. Doesn't matter what it is, worst and worst. You have no control over it. And when we allow ourselves to be identified by sin, we allow ourselves to fight it even harder. Let me ask you a question. If when you walked in the door of any church, you had to wear a sign that stated the worst thing you've ever done in your life, you walked into this room, everybody would identify you by that one thing. Would you come to church? You wouldn't, but you don't have to because we're not identified that way. And that's an important lesson that Jesus teaches us. We're not going to identify this guy as an invalid anymore. We're going to identify him as a saved creature of God. And that's how what Jesus is telling us is not this special story that Jesus is going to do for you. That's true. But what he's telling you is, this is how we treat people. This is what we do. Every person we come in contact with, every person is a creation that deserves love, mercy, grace, and compassion. They don't deserve to be identified by their sin. They don't deserve to be judged by their sin. They don't deserve to be made enemies because they believe something different than you. You're called to be something entirely different. We are not called to be identified by our sin. I'm going to wrap up with this. We are not called to be identified by our sin. Instead, we are called to be identified by the grace that eliminated it from our life. And some of us are still struggling with sin. I get that. But we're struggling because we're trying to do it ourselves. And I'm telling you, you can't. Give it a name and let it go. Give it a name and let it go. We're going to end, if you'll just bow your heads with me. Dear Heavenly Father, what a blessing it is to be in your presence. And Lord, I just pray that one sentence, one word impacted somebody's life from you. And Lord, I just pray that as we leave here today, as we leave the service that ran a little long, but it ran a little long because of your presence, that I just pray that you embolden somebody to no longer be identified by shame and guilt and sin and drama and a broken worldview that makes us think that we can somehow do something that only you can do. Lord, show that grace to somebody today. Lord, I thank you in your Son's precious and holy name. Amen.